Uh, Hello everyone, good evening and welcome. Thank you all for your patience this evening. We are still waiting for one of our panel members to arrive. Apparently there's been a bit of an accident on the Harbour Bridge, but looking at the time, we thought we'd get started and just excuse us when we accommodate Uncle Ray Kelly when he arrives a little bit later on this evening. So welcome to the Museum of Sydney on Gadigal Country. My name is Bob White. I'm the Head of Production and Experience with Museums of History, New South Wales. And I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet this evening, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to all First Nations people here with us this evening. I want to acknowledge that we are meeting at the Museum of Sydney, which is built on the site of First Government House. This site is an important symbol of first contact between two cultures that had vastly different traditions, identities and languages. It is an honour tonight to be celebrating New South Wales Aboriginal languages and their revival from a cross-generational perspective. Language is a fundamental part of identity and connection to culture, country and community. This conversation is part of our monthly First Nations speaker series, which is presented in collaboration with GML Heritage and the Research Centre for Deep History at the Australian National University. And this evening, it is my great pleasure to welcome our event partner, the Aboriginal Languages Trust, and also to introduce you to their Senior Communications and Marketing Officer, Will Cooper. Will is a proud Wiradjuri Yorta Yorta man from the Southwest Slopes region of New South Wales, and he's going to convene tonight's panel. Thank you, Will.
Thank you, Bob. Can everyone hear me? Okay, well, that's good to know. So, good evening, everyone. Before I begin, I too would like to acknowledge that we meet at a place that always was and always will be Aboriginal land, land of the Gadigal people. And I too would also like to acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today and pay deep respect to the elders of the past whose experiences we can learn from, and the present who can provide guidance and direction. Welcome to tonight's cross-generational Aboriginal language revitalisation discussion, where we have brought together, well, at the moment, we have brought together 3 Aboriginal language practitioners. Poor Uncle Ray, we're going to, I'll go gentle on him once he arrives, from across New South Wales to share their experiences and insights regarding their respective language journeys. Will Cooper, I'm a proud Wiradjuri Yorta Yorta man, and I'm from the Aboriginal Languages Trust, and also Uncle Ray Kelly is also one of our board members. And just as a bit of background information, the Trust is, as a partner in tonight's event, it is a relatively new New South Wales government agency which was established in March 2020 with an aim to increase the use of Aboriginal languages in New South Wales, support Aboriginal language groups in their language revitalisation efforts, and bring awareness of the contributions that languages bring to both Aboriginal people and also New South Wales as a whole. So you have to excuse me, I prepared something a little earlier. On the 24th of October 2017, New South Wales became the first jurisdiction in Australia to enact Aboriginal languages legislation, the Aboriginal Languages Act 2017, and this act acknowledges the importance of Aboriginal languages to Aboriginal people and to all people in New South Wales, and the need to reawaken, grow and nurture Aboriginal languages. Aboriginal custodianship of Aboriginal languages is a fundamental principle of the Act. Which brings me to our wonderful panel members. What I might do is throw over to the 3 of you, if you can introduce yourselves, who your mob is, and where you've come to join us tonight.
So my name is Michelle Perry, and I'm from up at Karua. I live on Warramai country, and the language for our area is called Gatang, which I'm happy to be learning now and sharing.
I'm Inara. I'm a Wandjuri Jaranja woman, and I come from Nowra, and the language I'm learning is Darul.
Ruva Mellor, Gomeroi Fala. I'm coming here from Tamworth, and Gomeroi language is the name too.
I guess, go to the first question. Could you talk about your respective journeys to become a language speaker and what your motivations were? Annie Michelle?
Yeah, no, possibly. Now, I'm new to this. I was very happy to find a course that was going to give me back, you know, part of my culture, my language that was taken from us. And I remember doing it from Urubai Language Centre and learning that, and each week going, how it was fulfilling me, and I don't know, it was just making me more proud of myself and strengthening my culture, and I just really wanted to give that back to my community where I lived. So the grandkids got it. When I went home, I pumped that into the grandkids and was teaching them as I was learning at class. I was coming home and teaching my grandkids and loving it, and I just want to get it out there in my community.
So Uncle Ray, or just...
Uncle Ray.
Everyone, this is Uncle Ray.
We're in Australia's greatest race. Need a gale too.
You should have went first.
Indeed.
Uncle, thank you for joining us. You made it here safe and sound, that's the main thing.
Wife hasn't killed me yet.
Early days.
You've been still young. We've just begun, so we just did introductions on everyone and just begun talking about everyone's what their respective language journey.
Okay.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh yes,
Yes.
Ray Kelly. Identify with the Dangati Gumbengi groups on my father and mother's side. Also with the Milroy on my grandfather's side. Yeah, we're a bit of everything. A little bit about my journey.
Yeah.
Look, I've been involved in perhaps not the recovery, but the investigation of languages at least since 2006. Had a healthy interest obviously before that, but critically looking at language description, analysing language in that period of time, and just excited to be involved with the recovery of languages in general.
Ruben, do you want to share what drew you to your language journey?
Yeah, an experience that I find that I have really, really often is talking about what language, and in this case Gomeroi, what language people grew up with, and what the baseline is for most people. For most people my age, there's words like muni, or the Australianification, just call them munis, head lice. That's something that a lot of people just grow up with. And then from there, what is that word? Where does that come from? And then it's a weird word to start off with, I'm sorry, but and then from there it's actually like, well, where does that word come from? Why do you say this and why do I say this? And then kind of at the start of the very first COVID lockdown, I started looking at it really heavily, and that kind of snowballed from Moonies into a whole language.
Well, I always grew up with hearing my uncles learning and teaching about language, trying to learn new words, find new words, and my mum, she would always, you know, around the house say little words. So that would always like get me to wanting to know what they're saying, know translations, know how to speak my language in general. And then, yeah, I started to get into culture easy, which just brought me to song and dance. And then from that, I just went straight into language with my uncles, and this is what my mother and my family.
And you're 14 years old, is that correct? no, very inspiring. Like, I'm not a language practitioner, so working at a place like the Aboriginal Languages Trust, yeah, it's very inspiring. So I really appreciate the four of you coming and sharing your stories tonight, because it's extremely inspiring for a mob like myself. And I guess one thing that speaking of some of the, be interesting to hear, what do you think are some of the common misconceptions around Aboriginal languages, especially from a non-black fella lens? You know, like, I know for myself, I've been asked in my previous jobs how to pronounce certain Aboriginal words, and people just assume that because you come from a certain background or perspective, that it's an inherent like knowledge that is within you. What the four of you think of that perception, or what stereotypes do you think we need to break down about Aboriginal language?
Well, we don't all speak one language.
Mm.
You know, I think just because they think we're Aboriginal that we all just speak one language. We're all from our own different areas, you know, from our own tribes, our own mobs, and all got the different dialects in our language within our areas. So that's something that I think is really big.
Yeah, and I feel like some people just fully forget that we even have our language in general. Like, they disregard like our language and just fully forget, don't put it in place, and I don't know, do nothing about it.
People, when you say something and they say, oh, you can say that in blank, or you can say that in Gomeroi, I didn't know that they were able to say that or able to express that. That's something that I find pretty shocking. That doesn't really make any sense. Like, if you can express it in English, you can express it in whatever language you're speaking.
One of the greatest hurdles I think we have to overcome, and one of the things that really irritates me about people who think they understand our language is that there is a complexity there beyond either what we're experiencing right now, but that deep complexity of language belies or is not taken into account, that people actually think it's a very primitive language, that it has, that it does little more than say, me feed hungry. And I think it was Lester Bostock, probably in the later 1890s or 80s, that was talking about the way in which people wanted to see our language, and they called it Ugg language, Ugg. And I think there is a deep complexity there that really demonstrates that the great sophistication of 65,000 years of dialogue, cultural development over 65,000 years, and I think that people actually don't understand that there is a complexity to the languages.
Do you think the language discussion has been, or just the state of Aboriginal languages has been almost like a race when it comes to the colonisation discussion? You know, we know about, removal, stolen generation, many of these other factors. Does language tend to get left out in its importance and significance, especially with the well-being of our people? Is that something that tends to be overlooked?
I would say historically that's the case, and contemporarily it's the case. People, even though we're obviously having a conversation about a voice and perhaps the conversations about treaty tomorrow, I think people have ignored languages to the point that it's not in a conversation at all. Our sovereignty is embedded within language. It's embedded within country. It has always been there, and it will continue to be there. I look forward to a day when people are honest enough to say, okay, well, this is stolen land. I really, because that's just honourable. It's honourable and it's straight. It's not aggressive. It just is. Dayan go go, dawan go. I'm going home to my own town. So when we talk about Dungutri, there's either two ways to Dungutri. It's either Dungutri, that's in country, or Dayangutri, and that means it's my country. So I don't know. I just think it has been erased, and people I'm very concerned that the love affair that we're having with language at the moment is good. It's healthy in communities. But if it doesn't lead us to a greater sense of our sense of sovereignty and our sense of place and our sense of belonging, I'm just concerned that it can't be just happy meal time. It's got to be more than that.
Well, I know from. Oh, sorry. Do you want to?
Should answer you.
Well, it saddens me. I don't like to talk about it if my grandkids ask me, why isn't it that we don't have language? Why aren't we talking fluent language? You know, I don't like to go back and reflect on the history to why. You know, it's something that needs to be, people need to think about why we don't have our language.
Do you know why, Ray, I asked you the question, why when we were young men growing up, everybody spoke a little bit of language, but every time you left the reserve, they'd say,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't want you to talk that because of the reason of the system.
I would say that everywhere in this country, Aboriginal people have great language. What is determined as Aboriginal language, I think it's a bit voyeuristic from white Australia. They want us to either stand on one leg with a lantern on our shoulder and stand. They don't want us to be, the young person who's sitting, creating this contemporary music form. They don't see that that's a continuation of culture and a continuation of practice and a continuation of sovereignty. But everybody has words, from munya, muni, to dukken, all sorts of words. Everybody's got language, and that's what our real opportunity is. We all have.
But your mic can't.
Dukken. Everybody has language. Everybody's got language, and that's the key to this whole recovery. And I'm going to call out the challenge of working from raw, uneven data, which is that which is written. If you do not use your own cultural lens, that cultural lens that is handed down to you by your elders and by those community people who continue to hold stories, then that material on paper is worth nothing. It's wiping your name with it, because it's got to be more than that. Because we do hold that knowledge. It's still in our community. And so, Sister Michelle, when you talk about, you don't want to tell those kids about the great tragedy and the harm, but if you then talk about them saying, hey, stop being my all, they know that already. We know language already. So for me, it's, and I'm sorry, I'm Russian, we're late.
You're right. Well, with that, I guess going along with that, for the Aboriginal Languages Trust, our vision is that all New South Wales Aboriginal languages are strong and healthy. So what does strong and healthy languages look like to you all?
I think as long as we keep our language strong and ongoing, motivate younger people, older people, anyone to learn language, because that'll keep it going and strong and healthy.
Just regarding strength, I think it's the biggest challenge with that is people who are committed to the essentially till death practice that you have to hold, and getting people might be interested in language for 4 months and they're solid, they keep coming, and then they go, I can't, and then they just stop. That's something that we in Tamworth at the moment with our community lessons is we have a very small community of strong language speakers. There might be 2 or 3, but that's worth nothing if something happens to us. We need to pass that on to another person. So just I don't know if I'm addressing the question here, but if one of the challenges of that is keeping language strong with one person and then them being able to run that to the point where they can give it to another person. One
Keeping
person.
the teachings and learning active, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uncle, you said you wanted to...
I just wanted to respond to that, those couple of words. Till death practice, or practice till death.
Oh, well.
No, I love it.
Sorry, I thought he was going to drill me there.
No.
He's coming for you,
No,
Ruben.
that's outstanding. That's outstanding, because that's what we've got to be we've got to be able to articulate these, our place in this, and the challenges that are in front of us. And man, that's just brilliant. Brilliant.
There's a fella, and that we've had, and he was really solid for a year of learning, and we got him to the point at the moment where you can sit down after a year and you can just talk with him solidly. He's a weapon. But recently, he's just fallen off and just hasn't been interested, hasn't been helping anyone. And one of the things, one of the other fellas there sat him down and said to him, and it was, language at the start is a gift and a privilege. And it's this awesome thing, and you can show everybody, look at what I know how to say. But then it gets to a certain point where you've got enough where it's a responsibility that you have to look after. And that's another thing that we struggle with, is getting people to understand that responsibility. And then once you know a certain amount, it's like, bro, you win, you can't leave now. We're not in a space where you can just go move to Europe or something, bro. You're staying here. No holidays.
I will make a comment though, and I think it's the generational change. Had the conversation today with a group of primary school children, and recounted my time at school and the way things were, and I'm sitting with my mother-in-law who's 87 and I'm 63, and to all of those kids we were all ancient. But I think there's a generational change that needs to come in with the trust. We've got some reasonably senior people in the trust, and I'm not saying that we're ready to pack it in, but I think it's about us looking towards who are the future change agents. Really love the idea that you've got to practice. I continue to do that as much as I can. Even if I've got to talk to myself, I'll do that. But if we want for the whole of the state, I think that in truth we've got to distribute the money equitably. We've got to make decisions sometimes about the more challenged areas, and maybe there are greater efforts that we need to make in those, particularly the rural, remote and far west communities. We should send out the challenge though. It's about you guys out there coming to us and telling us that you've got to put us on notice as well. But I think it's important that that we share, regardless of our opinions about the type of work we're doing or the type of analysis or resource. We've got to share. We've got to continue to share and go, because you never know when you're going to get inspired, as that young man just did to me.
We've really just segued into my next question, which was about how do we engage younger mob, and even community who say, again, there's people like myself who are blackfellas but aren't in language revitalisation. What are the gaps? How can you encourage more mob to get involved, to is there a conversation about the digital access? Is that still apps, or is it or classes? You know what I mean? Is there format? Is there? Be interesting to hear some of your thoughts in regards to how can we engage our youth and increase our interest in participation.
Well, I know, in school now, and I know just talking to these two young ones about schools now, having dancing and singing and that, and a lot of our language now is coming back through our dancing and singing and learning our songs to go along. I love that it's going through the school. I see it a lot in my local town where I've been doing a bit of the language where I can you know, I might see a kid down the street now and they'll sing out to me in language, like, just love it. Makes me do the quick, you know, flip to see who's singing out to me. When I walk into the school now, you know, they can all greet me in language and happy to come up and see, you know, that's all the different nationalities happy to come up and get in my face and say hello and give us the cuddle. But I see definitely a lot in the schools and are bringing more stronger through with the young people. And, you know, they're just so inspiring that, you know, we've got some young people in our language today.
And I feel like it really depends on who they surround themselves around. Like if you have a parent that is like an Aboriginal parent and they're not really focused on their culture, don't talk about it, just push it aside, then obviously that child isn't going to grow up thinking, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And again, in schools, like in the school, I don't know how to explain this, but like people that you surround yourselves with, like if you have one student...
If you're surrounded by people who are supportive of your journey and culture, yeah. I know, yeah.
Like if you surround someone that's saying, nah, that's shame, why are you going to
Pride
do
and
that?
culture, yeah.
Yeah, but like if you've got someone that's got a mindset saying, go do it, like that's your culture, keep going, then it's just going to thrive you and, you know, go and, you know, learn what you need to learn.
You're 14, so what was your gateway? What's in sort of been your family's been your real inspiration in regards to what other young mob your age, what do you think could be, you know, is it apps, is it TikTok, is it, you know, is it, you know, yeah, I'm curious. I'm just curious to know about this is what we wanted to do today, was to bring on that cross-generational discussion, you know. Yeah, I'd be interested to know, what do you think would be a success or something that could be tried or trialed?
Wait, you mean like what could push someone
Yeah,
to do it?
yeah.
Well, I don't know. I feel like just having support around you, it would really help you to get motivation to do stuff like this. But I feel like that's all you need, just support and
Accessibility.
Yeah, and good, I don't know, social groups and surroundings. I think that's all you need.
I think, sorry, no, you go.
Oh, I was just going to say, especially regarding support, I work in a lot of schools or have worked in a lot of schools in Tamworth and still do some. The schools at the moment do nothing to support kids, especially regarding dance. Mainly all the young people, and that's under 16 and under, that are interested in language at all, enough to pursue it outside of school in our lessons that we just do at the office, they all come from culturally strong families. Not one kid that does a dance program in a school pursues that. And the schools seem to be just happy with one little dance lesson every month. One of the schools I go to, Tamworth High, had a boys and a girls dance group, and they got rid of them both because the science teacher complained it was cutting into their class time. And now, when I'm there and one of the other uncles is there, sometimes, because I'm there already doing a lesson, they get to dance, because I'll just go, let's go do one. Just because we've got time and it's lunch.
Well, that's really, again, what I'm loving about all the questions is that they're all sort of really segueing into one another. And it was about, like, what's missing, like, structurally, like, what should be implemented in order to help create, support. What is the support that is? What are the gaps? Is it education? Is it, what do you?
I think that the schools don't consider them as, the schools go, well, what is this going to give the kid? They're looking at it from a completely academic lens. And they go, well, why does this kid learning this dance about this bird? What does this matter? Every single fella that I teach language now is interested in it because he's strong in dance, or because she's strong in dance, because they're strong in song or something. That seems to be the big pathway. And the schools look at these programs and sorry, I'm trying to go back in that what you asked.
No, you're doing well.
They need to approach it as if they're allowing these things to happen because of what needs to be repaired. The approach of, schools need to be involved in those kind of cultural, or what's the word, reparations. That's what it is. It's not so they can go and, you know, well, what skills is this? Doesn't teach them how to, you know, change a tyre so they can get a job, Bob Jane. Why would I send them to this program? But I just think they just need a value. That is the solution. Valuing.
So valuing culture.
Yeah, and reparations in school to create people that are stronger in that, because at the moment they don't. And I really think if the schools approached it like that, because you know they open up 20 footy programs that get rid of the science lesson, they have no issue with that.
Equally as important is the community support for our language endeavours. There are a core group of people always that's activating in community, but in truth lots of our community don't bother. That's their job. Somebody else is doing it. And I think if we're really you know, if we're really going to set and recover language truly and effectively in community, then you've got to have everybody coming along. And it's not about everybody learning language, but it's about everybody supporting somebody else that's doing it.
Mm.
I like the idea of, and I don't know what to call it, a language bee, or it's got to be more than a language bee. And I don't know, I like the bee, but it's, you know, but I would love to see not competitions, but healthy cultural activities where young people are allowed to express themselves in a cultural framework. And a community is sitting and listening to it. We do have our dance performances, which are great and they're exciting, and there are lots of people doing that now. But I'd like to hear it. I'd like to go along and listen to somebody talk language. And I don't care if it's partly in English and they're trying to tell me a story. But the more that they can stay inside language, and I have other tools to maybe, you know, like what do you call them on the screen? You know, the subtitles. If that, you know, then what we've got is we've got young people who can immerse themselves in a cultural expression, and if we can come along and listen to those young people, and cheer for them and clap for them when they've delivered their piece. See, to me, I think that's the reinforcement. You know, I'm all for land rights and fighting on the streets, because I come from that era. And by the way, I think we've forgotten how to do that a little bit, just quietly too. Sorry. But if I could go to a school and listen to a whole group of kids, I don't care if they're telling me a story or singing me a song, you know, and I can clap and, you know, congratulate them. To me, that's really good. But I don't think it just has to happen in schools. It's got to happen in communities too.
Is there such, I know, the Trust got to go out to Gomeroi country the other week, and some of the discussions there were about how, I guess it's some of the internal community bits and pieces when it comes to language revitalisation. You know, just with you know, there is courses, there is those on the ground, there is all those different approaches with how language has been revitalised and brought back to life. How can internal community issues be combated or managed, or any thoughts when it comes? I know it's an extremely complex issue to bring up, but I guess it's about how can you create, I guess, a safe place for community to access and speak language if there's anything. Yeah, if the community aren't incredibly all supportive, or there's different approaches to how learning, or even just the dialect itself is available.
I want to hear Ung first before I phrase.
I can tell you I don't care anymore. I don't care if somebody comes along and tells me that I'm talking the wrong thing, or I'm saying the wrong thing, or if because I don't care. I'm too old, not too old, but I'm too old to be spending time, you know, chin wagging over nothing. I want activity. I want to get something out of it. So I'm happy to have a quick conversation and go, well, you might be right, but I don't think so, and then leave. But by the same token, I won't say you're wrong. What I'll go is, that's your opinion, this is my opinion, but let's keep going. So I don't care about the politics, because I think the politics is not of our making. Our old people sat in those circles, and not just men, women as well, sat in those conversations about what was good and needed in our communities, and we can do it again. We can do those again. And so the politics is such a disgusting thing in our communities, you know, to actually think that our people are not smart, that our people are not creative, that our people are not genuine, I think is an indictment, and I think colonisation works in that framework. Go on now.
I think, so, a bit of context, and these fellas have seen a lot of it, it's fine there. A fella, Jaden, and I, we run community lessons. Sometimes it's 2 days a week, sometimes it's 7. And a lot of people come through that door off 5 years of learning what might be wrong. They will say the same thing what you said, what might be wrong. And their first reaction, and we're very lucky that we get to teach with ASLA. If you're not familiar with that method, I really recommend looking at it, because in that context, we don't have to speak English to teach at all. So it is part of the solution, but people come in and they might be learning something that we don't necessarily agree with, and then their first instinct is to go, who taught you that? And it's like, oh, well, like 200 years of research from like 5 different authors and 2 old fellas in tapes. But then they go, but this person didn't tell me that, and that's that thing like, oh, well, that's, where we go with this. But we try to be sensible and that kind of thing. And I do get riled up in those politics. These fellas over there have seen me get riled up in those politics hardcore. But I think part of our solution with that, and we have seen it as a solution, is that method ASLA. Because when you remove English, you remove the ability to argue about language in English. And then a person's brain will naturally start picking up the patterns, the solid patterns that are laid for all those tapes, all the patterns that exist. And then it's a really good way to resolve those issues without confronting someone in that kind of argument. Am I phrasing this right? And it's really good because I have seen people on the verge of tears realising what they've been learning for almost a decade is mostly not solid.
What I would say though is that we have the right to say, I thought that yesterday, but I think this today.
Yeah.
I think that frees us from the idea that there has to be only one way.
Yeah.
There are lots of ways to say the notion of motion and action. And so just because one group of people will say it this way doesn't mean the other group saying it in a different way is different. It's just 2 different ways of saying the same thing. But I love the idea of being free from it. If you can immerse yourself enough in language and you hold on long enough, then you're in Murruin. And people, the word Murruin means to be educated, to transition through something. And people said, oh, okay, that's only a man's word. Well, guess what? Threlkel wrote that Murrin Miji was a domesticated dog. Now, I don't think we want to be talking about being domesticated, but I think we want to be talking about being highly educated. So,
through the trust there, how do you see a place like Dungutty, where I come from, and you come from, Ray, where our land and our country, where we have people in opposition of one another, instead of all working together. Kempsey's at that stage where you got everybody talking language. There's 5 or 6 facilitators at different schools. Working in a preschool, we have only Vicky working with us, but she's left alone. So, you know, if the trust can come to the point to give us a bit of a hand to employ young people to go along with these older people to the work in these schools with these kids, because a lot of children, you know, we teach, we're the oldest preschool in New South Wales. We've been going 58 years. And every morning those kids go, yeah, why? Burren Murray, good morning, hello, Balu, goodbye, Bimai Murray, good afternoon. So they say that all the time. And when they leave our school, we've got one language teacher that will go out to the next school to re-engage with them at the next level. But we don't have enough people in that working with them.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that because especially like I see as for myself and I see other people that are around me that are very interested in language. They've got another job they've got to do.
Yes.
You know, they're doing another role.
That's right.
So we need where we can find funds where they can be full-time employed in, you know, keep revitalising our language, you know. We need more people around so they're sitting around, they're able to be sitting in our community, sitting at our preschools, going to our schools. Because too many people have got other jobs that they've got to do because they've got to live,
The cultural
you know.
load, essentially.
Yeah.
That's right. And it's always the same, I'm sorry, but it's always the same group of people having to do just about everything.
Yeah.
You know, sorry, Michelle, you must be. Can you do this?
Yeah.
Go down and see Michelle. She'll get the fish. Whatever. It's always that load carrying, and it's absolutely it is a disgusting thing to experience when you see some people who are just worn out from just day in, day out. But there are ways for us to do this, and for me, it's more important that we have these spaces where people can openly and freely communicate. You can do it online. You must have online conversations. I can well imagine you doing that.
Oh, we don't really do stuff
You
online.
don't do face to face.
Yeah, so
you
we've
get yourself over here. That's right. All good. But maybe there are groups of people who are not on country that you could engage with as well. We've tried that a little bit. But I think that the important thing is that we've got 10 years. Well, we've got 7 years left. What do we got left? Look, language isn't going to stop. You know, because we've got people who are going to ensure that it doesn't stop. And young people who are going to be active in that place.
So how can we initiate some, like, we've got two elders on stage, or two our younger mob on stage. How can the two support each other? What's the best way to?
I would love to have conversation with young people and let them tell me what they see. I hope that they would give me the courtesy to respond. I would hope that I would have enough sense to be respectful to what the young people see, because they will see things that we don't see. You know, we carry the burden of the trauma from the protection board, the welfare board, and through our mums and dads at the protection board. But we can't allow those kids to have that, well, you mentioned that earlier, you want to say that, to carry that load. What we want them to do is to be aware that it happened. But tell me, what is it you see now? What is it that you want to say? If you ask me to say something and we sit down together, older people, young people, and we craft up what that expression should be, or what that way will be. But young people are going to make their own expressions up anyway. They do. We do it every generation, and it will stick, you know. And so words, sometimes that were swear words, didn't start there, but they got there now, and they're changing into another thing now. So, but I think we do need to have regular conversations. I believe on country, and I don't believe it should be talk fests about what you're doing in terms of your program. I think it should be these conversations where we're sitting down going, will you listen to me? And let these young people do their talking, and then them old people can respond. And sometimes we might be the ones saying, can you listen to us? And then then let them respond. But this two-way flow, you know, this back and forth. You know, I'm parroting my poor old dad now, thinking about this word that they were talking about in the 70s called transaction analysis. There's a, you know, a big thing about social development, but literally people made an effort to create relationships in communities. So they would have, you know, maybe 2 or 3 people that formed their own little core group, and they regularly got together and talked, and then they would come back and report to the bigger group. I just would think it'd be great to let young people tell us now what it is that we need to do.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it would be like good to sit down with an elder and talk to them about how they grew up with culture, how it was like them when they were my age, you know, going through and learning what I'm learning right now, because I know that both of our experiences would be completely different. So, you know, sitting down with them, hearing what they got to say, and yeah, it would just be good to sit down, have a nice conversation, even with multiple elders, because everyone has different experiences. Yeah, it would be lovely.
I think support is a really big thing. Young people, and I'm included in that, tend to be cliquey. I'm talking about the clickiness, not the young peopleness. Tend to be cliquey.
Yeah.
And I do that. I know fellas, you know, like, I know you've been Narragadd, I don't want to talk to him, but regardless, like, support with, you know, elders in the community being able to be like, all right, now, you know, this fellow over here doing language, she doing her language, we're not particularly concerned, you're all doing the same thing. And just, you know how it is, like, elder says something, or, you know, you've got to listen to it and do something, and just being able to, I find a lot of, what is it? What's the word? No, I'm at a loss for words here. I find it's you know what I'm talking about. It's very easy to understand what to do under a guide from an elder in the community.
Oh, there you go.
Through an elder in the community, and I think if I'm having that experience, then surely this fella over here would too. And if we're all working for the same thing, just that support and guidance of making sure fellas remember that everyone's working towards the same thing. That's something that I think about a lot.
Well, that's a really, like, I guess that's it. Like, it'd be interesting to know, because I guess that's it at the end of the day, especially when it comes to cultural, you know, everyone, because many of you were born and raised in culture, it's still an ongoing journey, sharing and listening. Like Uncle Ray and Auntie Michelle, what was the language space for you both growing up, or even like in the past 10, 20 years? What did that look like compared to what we're seeing now?
Well, when I was a child, you know, there was plenty of language around. Not language enough for us to engage with because they kept us at a distance, but, you know, big ears can hear a lot of things, and so and there are words that will stick, predominantly the swear words, in our heads. So there was language then, but at the same time there was a deficit language that it lived in our communities, you know. Got nothing scratching from week to week, so that becomes part of your language conversation. You know, making words up, you know, meld up, meaning I got malnutrition. You know, people make up words and stuff like that. So that was the world we were in. But you know, there was a recovery that began in around 75 through to 80. People were really involved in reclaiming their sense of country and their communities. So that changed. But you know, just the gift of having some of them old people who could really let the lingo rattle was very yeah, it's very sad to think about it right now. And I'm thinking about you with not just your mum, but your grandmother, you know, just that amount of
Taken
lingo
away,
that was
yeah.
around.
It's very sad to even think about you grew up without your language, you know, that it was taken away from your grandmother and not passed down. And so I still live in an Aboriginal community, and yeah, we heard odd words here and there from different language. I've even got my list on my computer, you know, ones or words I'm calling mission words. Well, I'm remembering and bringing them back, you know, and ringing my sisters and brothers, yeah, you know, yeah, what about this word? Remember we said this word? And yeah, it's very sad. And you got to remember too, like when your mother married, they married someone from another tribe. So there wasn't fluent speakers either in that, you know, so then you're getting odd words from maybe someone, you know, inland or you're on the coast. Yeah, it's just, so when I got into language, it makes you sad to think back that you've already got to learn your language, that it was taken away. And that's why it's a passion now of mine to make sure I can do as much as I can and pass it on. And I've been fortunate at the moment. I've got a couple of young people that I'm very happy with, and I'm fine by taking them out on country and letting them run and talk where there's no reception, phone reception. I'm just seeing the difference in their interest in language when we're talking about the river and the water and the fish and things. Definitely got to get our kids more out of the country and get that interested in language. Having space, time, money, that's your job.
So where do we think the 5-10 years time? What do we think the vitality of Aboriginal languages will be? Or dream, goal?
Dream.
I know that's
Dream.
big. I know that's quite a big question, but
I would like to believe that. I dream.
Dream.
I dream that that in 10, 20 years' time, there will be in every community a language advocate, which will probably be an elder, with core groups of young people, with good structure around them in their community, recovering not just historical language words, but also the creation of new words, and for them to be talking about their sense of country and their sense of place. I really hope to hear the type of language that my grandfather and great grandfather, when I was a kid, the level of lingo that they could do. I'd love to be able to hear that again. You know, and it can't happen without sharing, without communicating. As the young fellow just said there, you know, when you take the English out of it, it makes it so hard for us to just jump because we want the word order, which is not ours. We want the explanation, which is not ours. But we need that because we fear that we're not smart enough. But we are. We're our young people, but all of our communities. There is a brilliance in our community that, you know, we couldn't have lived in this country for 65,000 years if we weren't. So if my dream would be that, you know, I'm going to walk into a community and I'm going to listen to these people next door to me and walk and they're going to be talking in lingo. If I can give you one example of how I saw that, I was in New Zealand last year and I walked around Waikato University and there were two Maori students at university, a male and a female, and I walked behind them for about 15 minutes and they were laughing and carrying on and probably saying, this silly black will be behind us, he don't know lingo, but and I just enjoyed.
Yeah.
I enjoyed their talk. I enjoyed listening to them. You know, clearly the emotion and the laughter and the joy was there, and I had no idea what they were saying, but I just knew that they were saying, "Hey, I bet they were saying we were deadly." So that's my dream.
Well, I grew up, well, right now actually, my culture, like what I learn is more male dominated. I have more male teachers,
Go on.
which
Bring it
is
on.
which is like where I come from is
Until you come
like
on.
yeah. I've got more male teachers than female teachers, and it's like I hear them going to men's business, and I've always wanted to think about like women's business and me going through women's business, because there's not like heaps of women leaders and who I'm getting taught by, so I don't have heaps of women roles and stuff like that. So I hope there's more women's business where I come from, down Nowra. Yeah, because a lot of it is just male teachers and male speaks.
So gender balance for both.
Yeah,
Yep.
just on the same level
Yep.
as each other.
One of my dreams is like a large group of speakers that aren't afraid to be creative with language. I think, you know, like there's a lot of sitting down and going, well, how should we say this? And we always say ilgwala, which just means just say it. And if I know what you're saying, bang, mad. If I don't, we'll just try again 20 minutes, you know? People that aren't scared to not have to stop and then go, oh, well, this is what I meant to say, but going back to English. Well, actually, I was trying to say this. Some, you know, a solid amount of people who have that confidence to be able to be incredibly creative, write poems, write jokes. We were sitting down the other day and realised, like, no one's written a joke yet. Why can't we be funny in language too? We just watched a 2-hour comedy film, you know. Maybe someone's going to make a 15-minute comedy in Gomeroi one day, you know. That kind of stuff. I really am really keen to see people's creative endeavours with language, for language speakers, with no subtitles.
I'm just saying, going to say that.
Be the change you want to see, Ruben.
Yeah. I'd love to be in my little community, just hear the kids out there playing and talking in language and, you know, laughing and, yeah, that's just it, influence that, you know, I hear that around, all the kids outside talking. I can bet they'll be creative with language.
Hey.
Do you want to, I'm not sure how we're going for time, quickly throw to, one or two audience questions if there's any. Don't be ashamed now. Nah.
Well, you know, where I come from, we had, you know, our grandfather was a great language speaker, and you know, we would sit, Ray and I would sit in awe just to listen to him, and you know, I hear Ray talking now, and I go back in time to when I was a young boy listening to what they were saying, that it's still beneficial to me to learn those stuff because I'm an artist. I put that stuff with my art now, and I go into the schools, and now we're putting language with art. So you know, we have to go in this direction of sharing, caring, and being part of the next generation, because that next generation is our most important thing. And if we don't look after the language for those young people and have that language building on a step every day, you know, a different word to come along. But you know, once a week, you've got to spend a week with the word with children, because at this age that they, you know, they got other words to learn, and we find that we had one little fella in kindergarten in the koala room, which was the 3-year-olds, couldn't speak language, English. Got to the koala room, which is the 4-year-olds, and started mumbling. Now he's in the 5-year-olds, he's talking language.
or if we don't have any further questions, we do have.
Not a question so much as a comment. Just want to say thank you for everyone for coming along and sharing. Great, love your work. I love the way that when I was at the university up there, the way we'd have our conversations, and like the way that the thinking behind that, or behind language and behind the conversations, and like up home, I go and watch like Ruben and my son Jaden, and they sit there and they'll be there for half an hour or so and not mutter one word of English. Sure. And it's like it's inspiring, it's beautiful, and I love the idea that they're not only speaking in language, they're thinking in language. That they're the framework that it's coming out doesn't have to be defined by English. Sure. It's not compartmentalized by English. This is what it is because this is what it's always, I'm inspired as well. Like you're saying, not having that back in the day, and now you're learning it and sharing it.
Did you say you're 14?
Oh yeah.
That is absolutely ridiculous. Like, future's in good hands. Sure. Thank you to each and every one of you.
Can I just make a couple of comments? I'm inspired to come up with a joke. No,
Here we go.
I'm going to need to work out just how to say it. I mean, I can begin by saying, ngula bu ngay yang balara, ngay gaz manan, no, ngay bing ngay gaz manan. My brother rode a horse. I'm not going to say the horse went that way, he went that way. But the pole was still there. Maybe the pole. Yeah, anyway, so we can work it. But I am inspired by young people, and I really appreciate the fact that we've got young people in the game. I have to say that I'm really not just encouraged, but it does me good to know that I've got colleagues my age and that are still in the game, and I give it up to my sister up there and Michelle here, and I just go, we fight the fight because it's not for privilege, it's not for it's not for any of that. We fight because it's important to protect language, and because we don't just protect language, we protect country. And if we protect country, then we protect history. And the history cannot be half spoken. It can't be half talked about. That's what the problem has been. And the other thing is, we've got to be the writers. And so the one thing that I'm really interested in is driving an Indigenous Guri Murray-led linguistic recovery. I know I go on about this, but we've got to get to the point where we can do that. And we can sit down with other linguists and go on then, tell me what you think.
Gukon was complaining last night, he called me. Gukon called me last night, John Gukon called me last night, and he was complaining about
me?
No, he was just complaining about, he was like, they want to find only black linguists. I don't reckon they'll find many.
No, I don't want to only find black linguists, I want to find deadly linguists.
Yeah, that's it.
So you talked about the one word, munya, muni, munya, allows the mun. It's a female. It is, so it's not the swear word that it's been turned into. We've got to recover all this and take that back. Oh, no. Let's, unfortunately, when it came to the Dangati experience with this, they said, well, we don't want it like that. We then give an example. Darlai Kurigindar, no, I'm going to say it's having fun, but tell the child to sit near the woman. Darlai Ninagati Munra, sit near the woman. Munra. So they went, okay, we'll take Munra. Because they wanted the suffix. So long as the suffix was covering it. But in fact, it's Munra. So what about saying to these linguists that you don't have a place? But come and talk to us.
let us have a conversation and let us ask you what you see. Because what you're doing is you're spitting out the books and you're spitting out the descriptions, and we can't argue that. We can't say, why are you doing it this way? And if you're right, fantastic. If you're right, fantastic. And that's what I'm saying about the Indigenous-led recovery. That's not just to say only Guris or Murray should be in it. The new linguists tomorrow should be coming through and looking at the world through the lens in which we help unpack. Because we see it differently.
And we hear it differently with our audios recordings.
Yeah.
100%.
Anyway.
Thank you all so much for your time. Yeah, I guess one thing I will say, I'm just doing a quick plug on this is a bit, Aboriginal Languages Trust, give us a follow.
Thank you, everyone.